everybody. Welcome to InPsightRadio. I am your host, Danielle Egnew, and you are a fly on the wall to everywhere. It is wonderful to be with you all. And wherever you are listening in from the world, from the country, I am sending you love. And let's just connect during this podcast in a way that is just unbelievably cool. Let's just leave all the grossness of your week behind. And we are going to just join in love, and we're going to have a heck of a good time. We're going to have a good time. And for those of you that have been struggling with crazy, weird weather, I just want to send out some hugs to you. Here in Montana, we've been on the outskirts, thank goodness, of that massive inland cyclone storm that was hitting North and South Dakota and Wyoming and dropping tons of snow and whipping up 100-mile-an-hour winds. And this is par for the course for these weather patterns that I've been talking to all of us about since actually 2016 is when I started talking about it. And we can look back and really detect some crazy weather that obviously, yes, our globe is changing, our climate is changing. Yet from now, it's 2019, obviously, from now until 2025, we are really going to be experiencing some serious Sci-Fi Channel craziness. I mean, Sharknado weather, okay? And we're seeing this now, like I said, the superstorm that hit the Dakotas in Wyoming. And again, I just send that area so much love because we are able to affect the quantum field as a human race to change the vibration of our planet, and it will help with our weather. And for those folks in Alabama who had recently had those 23 people that were killed in Alabama because of those massive multiple tornadoes, Alabama, this time of year, for crying out loud, in the beginning part of March. So we are seeing some severe weather. And it's not about me gloating, saying, see, all my predictions have come true. I love to be wrong about bad weather. I want to be wrong about bad weather. Are you kidding me? It's just to say that remember that as we go into this transitional period in our planet, and yes, our planet does naturally swing with natural cycles, yet we have absolutely positively just punched this natural cycle in the face and moved it up, hundreds, thousands of years. So now we've got an accelerated weather pattern that's just being crazy. So as we move from now to 2025, again, we're going to be seeing more of that crazy weather, yet understand that our consciousness is playing into the weather. And I know that people don't like to hear that. They're like, oh, that's really stupid. Are you kidding me? You think my bad thoughts make the weather bad? Yeah, I do. There's almost 8 billion of us on the planet. Hello. We've got this electromagnetic net called the brain. We actually, through biophotons in the brain, are able to link up with one another in the quantum field, the fabric of the universe, the God particle. Our brains, those biophotons, gang, hello. They actually experience quantum entanglement. So as I think a thought here, one of those synapses in my brain is attached to another light particle somewhere in the known universe, and it's flashing at the same rate, resonance, and thought process as my brain. I mean, come on. Yes, we affect the weather. There's too many of us. There's too many of us acting as electromagnetic receivers and senders on this planet, gang. And that does affect the ionosphere. I mean, that's what we bounce our electromagnetic signals off of, our cell phone signals. That's why when we have solar flares and you can't make a cell phone call, that would be why. Because the ionosphere is lighting up like a Roman candle. So yes, of course, our consciousness, it affects everything. It affects clean and dirty water. It affects weather patterns. I mean, it's affecting everything. And of course, our carbon footprint is, definitely affecting everything. So as we move into this time frame, simply understanding that our thoughts are things, they are cognitive wheels that are actually gripping the surrounding environment with the teeth in the cogs. I made a pun. And we are actually moving weather and sociological change forward. A lot of things are moving forward right now. So just understand that, gang, that as we go through with this crazy weather, that our thoughts are things. And this many of us linking into that Wow, massive electromagnetic net around the Earth, which also interfaces with the upper atmosphere, which interfaces with our heat exchange, which interfaces, of course, with our jet stream and our clouds and our oceans. It's all connected. We're all connected. So let's send those parts of the country and parts of the world a lot of love. And I apologize for my stuffiness. If you're tuning into the podcast for the first time, I generally don't sound like Marge Simpson, but this has been a 2-podcast ordeal. And so we're going to see if next week I am out of the woods on sounding like I'm breathing through a cheesecloth, because there's nothing grosser than wearing headphones and hearing your own chest in your microphone. I mean, I sound like a swamp thing. Lord. Podcasts from the respirator. So anyway, thanks for sticking with me. I love you guys. Holy moly. Well, today's show, gang, ironically, is about healing frequencies. Healing frequencies in sound. And I may be sounding like the swamp thing over here, gang, yet I want to tell you something. I do a ton of vibrational work on my own body. I do a ton of it. And a lot of people in Montana, Wyoming, in this area have just been dropping like a rock with that horrible flu that everybody's had. Now, I have to tell you, because of the vibrational work that I do on myself, I, knock on wood here, I have not experienced that same flu. Apparently I got a sinus infection and I'm rocking and rolling the Marge Simpson here today. However, I never did get the flu. And my tonsils have been removed. I'm 50 years old, so of course I was among the generation where they were ripping your tonsils out if you had a sore throat, before they actually really decided that maybe they ought to leave those in there when you're a kid because, gosh, that's actually part of your immune system. So having no tonsils was awesome for me as a singer. Wasn't so awesome for me as somebody who, has no upper system in my throat. That my first line of defense of stopping bacteria from going down my throat is gone. It's been in a landfill since 1978, probably helped grow some crops by now. So basically, when we think about why we get sick, and we think about the vibration of the body, and we think about the vibration of the cells, we really are left with the fact that we are an incredible species made of water and salt. And salt water conducts electromagnetic energy and other frequencies, sound frequencies especially, like you wouldn't believe. I mean, honestly, they can hear whales all the way around the world. That sound travels underwater, especially in low frequencies. Man, it travels and it just goes. Water is so dense. And then, of course, the saline in the water, the salt, just carries everything. It's really phenomenal. So when we're talking about frequencies and the healing nature of frequencies, yeah, I'm coming at you today, a little Marge Simpson, yet I deal in frequencies all the time. So even though I've got this kind of pain in the neck, literally, post-nasal drip, whatever you want to call it, I never did fall dead with the flu this year. And I mean, it went through Montana like a house of fire. And listen, I'm not saying I'm all that in a bag of chips. I'm a musician and I deal with angels day in and day out. And angels speak in a harmonic tone language. They're not necessarily speaking in a language. The language that angels speak, if you want to call it a language, is made up of harmonic overtones of sound and light. And it's not exactly like they have an exact written language, yet in the same way that you can pour sand on a vibrating plate that is playing different pitches, A, B, C, D, and you can watch the sand change into incredible, gorgeous shapes. I don't know if you've ever actually watched that on YouTube. It's really cool. In the same way that those shapes take form based upon the frequency of the sound, in the same manner, one can actually watch, if you want to call them characters form, as angels speak, in the light and sound harmonics that actually come in the overtones of their language. So, I mean, I can honestly tell you that angels aren't sitting around writing a book in an angelic language. However, there are, again, tones that come up that one can see, if you can see that frequency or spectrum, and those tones make vibrational glyphs in the harmonics of the light. So it kind of by accident makes a quote written language when angels speak. Why am I getting into this? Because we're talking about tones and healing tones today. And obviously, I do a ton of work, not only as a musician, but as a translator of angelic languages and many other languages, off-world languages, elemental languages. Good heavens, it goes. And all of these languages have in common the fact that inflection, especially in English, is huge. Now, if you get into other languages like Chinese and Vietnamese, you can take the same exact word, but if you say the word like that, it means one thing, and you say the word like that, and it means something completely different. And actually, the angelic language, as well as the languages on Sirius AB and the languages out in Otur, which Oturan, or many people call it Arcturian, those languages are also very tonally based. Now, English, we do have our inflections to get across context. But our inflections don't really get across meaning more than emotional meaning, but it doesn't change the meaning of the word. So to me, frequencies are just unbelievably awesome, gang. I love them. And I really attribute the fact that I've got a stuffy nose and kind of a goofy throat, but I attribute the fact that I'm not just dropping onto the floor with this wretched flu to the fact that I work in frequencies so often. So today I got really super excited because I want to talk to you about healing frequencies. Now, all sound is healing. All sound frequencies are healing. There are some sound frequencies in the subfrequency level or in, well, the subfrequencies that if the body is pounded with them over time, will actually break the cellular system down. And so it's fascinating to me that, when you hear those cars that are going down the street and they're over there just going boom, 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 boom. And the person in the car can feel that bass vibration, but they can't actually hear it. You're hearing it because you're actually 50 feet or 40 feet or 30 feet away from the vehicle. And it takes about 30 feet for a bass wave to actually throw over the sign line. And a sign line is just think of a piece of string in front of you, and then think of a curling needle going up over the top of the piece of string, and then going underneath the piece of the string in equidistant parts. That is one cycle of a wave. It's got to go over the sign line and under the sign line, and when it touches the sign line again, it's called a wave cycle. I'll try not to get too nerdy with this, you guys, yet I do have a sound sciences background, and I think it's really important to understand this stuff, okay? Because when we understand frequency, we understand the fabric of the universe. When we understand waveforms, we understand the communication of all vibrational, sentient, and even non-sentient life. And there can be non-sentient life. We understand that all things are connected by waveforms. Okay, particle waves, light waves, sound waves, knock it out of the ballpark. So the reason I get into this is because once we understand that we are a walking bag of salt water as a human being, and again, our bodies are relatively the same exact salinity as the ocean, actually. Once we understand that this is how we're made up, once we understand that there's nearly 8 billion of us on the planet, once we put all these pieces together and we understand that salt water, the oceans, are one of the most conductive surfaces that we have on our planet because of the particle matter and the saline crystals in the water, also, the water itself. Once we understand that we are living in an environment called the universe that is held together by a woven tapestry of vibration and waveforms and light is a waveform, then all of a sudden what I'm going to talk about makes a lot more sense. So let's get right into it. So we've heard of tonal healing, right? Tonal healing. Pardon me while I talk around my sinuses. Tonal healing has everything to do with allowing the body, our bag of salt water that we're walking around in, it allows us to absorb those frequencies, and it allows our cells to absorb the frequencies. And once our cells absorb those frequencies, the cells can vibrate and either be cued to do certain things through the vibration or cued to let go of certain toxins because of the vibrations. And, we talk about DNA on this podcast all the time. And one of the things I love to hit up is that years ago, my God, it was back in 2012, I started talking about how the lower 12 rungs of the DNA, or the lower 10, excuse me, were triggered not by chemical responses from the body, but by vibrational responses. Well, just very recently, the other day, 2 days ago, actually, I was surfing the web, and there was an article talking about how they're just now, scientifically understanding that what science thought was junk DNA, because it did not respond to chemical cues like the first 2 rungs of our DNA does, is not junk at all, which, myself and many, many other people, I'm not the only person, many people in my field have been talking about the fact that our DNA is waiting to be triggered vibrationally to release cues to the flesh and to the body to get well, okay? Yet those vibrational cues, they're waiting for vibrational cues, and the body is trying to communicate with the DNA that way. So just recently, science has come out and said, oh, guess what? It's not junk DNA. I guess there's some kind of a light vibration or some kind of vibration that's just rattling around and makes that DNA work. Well, there you go. So, for those of us that do all this channeling work, we've been getting that information for a while. Now, I think science is extremely important because it is the pursuit of coming up with a language to describe that which exists already. And I love the way that science thinks that it doesn't exist until science proves it. Actually, science is in the business of giving a language of proof to that which already is. So, really science is kind of, the dog that is going over there going, wait, what's wagging my tail? I don't know. But I'm appreciative to science because it gives concrete tools to folks who need to see those concrete tools in order to understand how the world is put together. And I love the pursuit of science. I'm a science junkie. So when we talk about healing frequencies in the body, one of the most popular metaphysical pop culture topics is the Solfeggio scale. And that's Solfeggio, okay? And the Solfeggio scale is what we talk about with the 528 hertz. People call it the miracle DNA, frequency. Now, we're going to do just the tiniest bit of debunking also in this podcast because I think it's super important to understand what we actually have to work with, all right? So the DNA itself, they've found will resonate at 528 hertz, which is actually C5. For any of you piano players, that's the C5 key. And that resonation in the DNA actually begins to unlock certain parts of those patterns, and the DNA begins to resonate back. Now, science still is not sure what the DNA is trying to say after it's triggered at 528 hertz, but they can actually tell that it's talking to the body and doing something. We've finally got the technology that can track what I was talking about in 2012 and 16 and all these. Again, I'm not the only one, gang. Yet what all of us were talking about, they now have the technology to track that the DNA is responding to this Solfeggio frequency. Now, what is the Solfeggio frequency? It's important to note, gang, that music is music, tones are tones, okay? And, in music, if you think back to Julie Andrews in Sound of Music, doe, a deer, a female deer, re, a drop of golden sun. And, me, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, that is the Solfeggio scale. And it came about a long time ago. I mean, it's based on all kinds of stuff. It's based on Arabic, it's based on Italian. And so it's been around for a long, long time. And the Solfeggio scale was a way to teach music. And it really had to do with the voicing of the music. So this has been around for a very, very, very long time and became very popular in the 1600s in Italy. Again, it was a means of teaching music. So to say that per se, the solfeggio scale is more holy or sacred than standardized tuning, which if you're a musician, standardized tuning, you'll find that at 440 hertz. And that's usually if you play guitar or whatever, that's normally what you're going to find your tuning at. It's not that the solfeggio scale is any more holy or sacred. It's that they found that indigenous scale, which we originally used to teach voicing, okay, and yes, to teach music too, but to teach voicing, this, keep in mind, this was before everybody was tuning their instruments to one another, because basically an orchestra would tune to A. So back in the day, it was a vocal toning technique and also a technique to teach notes. That tends to be more organic to human beings rather than more sacred, okay? And I really need to make the distinction there because all tones are sacred. Everything that's music is sacred, especially when we're dealing with healing. Now, I get a little uppity about this. I will totally admit it, gang, okay? I get uppity about the tuning thing because like I said, all frequencies are sacred. They are all holy. So to say that the solfeggio scale is more sacred than the Stuttgart pitch, it's not exactly accurate, all right? Standard tuning, that if you go and you play guitar, you're going to tune to what everything on the radio is tuned to. That is a universal standard tuning at 440 hertz. That's what we like to call A4. And if you go to hear an orchestra play, the first chair violin will start playing that A4. And pretty soon, the whole entire orchestra is tuning to that 440 hertz. And that 440 hertz was actually, well, it came about in about 1834-ish. And that was a standard after Johann Heinrich Schleiber decided that they needed to go off of what he had invented, which was a tonometer, and it was to measure pitch. And so the 440 hertz was considered happier, it was considered peppier, and as opposed to the 435 hertz, which is really popular, which is a flatter tone that was in the 1860s. Now, why was this a big deal? Because now there was a device was created, okay, again, called the tonometer, and the device was like a tuner. You know how you have tuners on your cell phones, or you watch people who play guitar, they snap a tuner on and they tune. Okay, so all of this, gang, all of this, if you think about it, is coming together in a way to standardize pitch. And as people started to have more access to musical instruments, then the ability to standardize the toning of one musical instrument to the other became more important. And back in the day, in the 1600s, I mean, you'd have to be a really, really, really wealthy person before you had a violin or a lute or anything. So it wasn't like they were wandering around going, oh my God, how are we going to get the folk circle together and we can all tune? That wasn't even existing. So basically around 1834, after the tonometer was invented, it was invented because more and more musical instruments were coming forward. So 440 hertz is the pitch that you hear that everything is tuned to on the radio. So when we talk about the solfeggio scale, that was the original do, re, mi, fa, so, and it was a more mellow tone. And it was, again, focused around the formation of the voice and the teaching of the notes. And it was before we all needed to tune up, universally. So it's very interesting when I do hear people talk about the solfeggio scale and how it's holy and it's sacred and it's all these things. I just like to be a little bit of a turkey and say, yeah, that's true, except for the fact that the world is tuned to 440 hertz at this time. And 440 hertz is a little sharper, it's a little more shrill, it's a little more edgy, yet it's what the world is tuned to. So if we want to go off of the universal quantum dynamic of everybody coming together to make tones, again, you see where I'm going with this? I mean, there's no such thing necessarily as sacred tones. However, we have been able to prove with science that our body does respond slightly better to different tones. One of the tones being, again, 528 hertz, which is actually C5 on a keyboard. Now, I get to play all these on a keyboard for you today. I'm so excited because I'm sitting here in my studio and I've got my keyboard hooked up. And so we're going to focus on the Solfeggio scale to go through this. But the reason I'm explaining all of this is because we can trip ourselves out a little bit too much in humanity, deciding that something is sacred and something is not. The human body does do better with mellow mid-range tones. And the funny thing about what they like to call the miracle frequency, that's what they're calling 528 hertz. The funny thing about that is that 528 hertz is C above middle C. Okay. And if you're a musician, typically you tend to try to stay away from C as a key because it's so bland. I mean, C is a key. If you're playing in it, it's universal. It kind of flows, but there's nothing really dynamic about it. Well, think about that. That's because it's triggering DNA to vibrate. It's a mellow frequency. C is cool. High C is a little shrill if you're soprano. But other than that, I mean, when we deal with 528 hertz, people are labeling that now as a transformation and miracles frequency. Now, what I think is interesting is that again, the DNA does respond to 528 hertz, yet the DNA does respond to combinations of harmonics in music. So if you're wired like me that breaks down all this frequency response, what you understand is it's great to have one tone that makes our DNA rattle and open up in a certain way. Yet it's not just the one tone, it's the combination of the harmonics. Like I was talking about earlier, the angelic language, or if you want to call it that, is a culmination of harmonics of light and tonality. And that's how you actually can see the characters in what you could call an auric field or an energetic field if you're into that kind of thing. So here on the Solfeggio scale, and I'm using the Solfeggio scale, even though I do believe all tonality is holy. I'm using the Solfeggio scale here because it was based more around the human voice, and because we produce sound, and our bodies are bags of salt water, and we are universally connected with almost 8 billion of us, and our thoughts create weather patterns, and our thoughts, actually we could create a weather pattern out of scratch if we wanted to, but our thoughts definitely contribute to weather patterns, and to culture, and to sociology, and to every cultural aspect we have, and to the healing of the body, because thoughts are frequency. I'm going to focus on the musical scale that was really more designed around the human vocal mechanism, the Solfeggio scale. So, you got 396 hertz, okay? And that's what metaphysics will say turns fear into joy, liberating guilt. You've got 417 hertz, which is undoing situations and facilitating change. Of course, our 528, which is transformation and miracles. It's the DNA repair because our DNA vibrates at that frequency. We've got 639 hertz, which is reconnecting and balancing relationships, which is cool, And again, keep in mind, these are just the pure tones and what folks have felt along with studying chi or prana. These tones actually open up not only in the neural net, but also in the chakral system. 741 hertz is solving problems or expressions and solutions. And this is the one that they call the cell cleaner, 741 hertz. And then, of course, 852 hertz is awakening intuition, returning to spiritual order. 963 hertz is the reset. That's the reset frequency. It's a higher tone, and it resets the body, mind, and spirit and chakral section, chi, prana, to its natural flow. So really, what I think is interesting about this is none of this, you have no reference for what this sounds like, right? I'm just giving you numbers. But let's kind of take this over to the keyboard here. Hold on. Okay, we're moving over here to the keyboard here. Now, that's so much fun. Now, what you're hearing is my keyboard in my studio, and I've dialed up a patch or a sound that's samples of voices, of human voices. So I just want you to hear what because we've been talking about C5, okay, and 528 hertz, or the DNA repair frequency, which it is, yet DNA starts to repair itself when we have a harmonic cluster of tones. But I'm going to play some of this for you, gang, instead of just explaining it, because I could throw numbers at you all day, and pretty soon you're going to want to just dig your ears out with a spoon, okay? So this is the C5 528 hertz on the Solfeggio scale, okay? Yes, seeing what I'm laying down. Okay, so what we do is just that is going to cause the DNA to vibrate. So I'm playing this frequency, and the DNA is going, oh, that feels good. Now, the cool part about this is that as we begin to understand how these frequencies layer over each other, gang, just hang with me. I swear this gets really cool. So we've got that is our C5. The cool part about this is as we layer these frequencies, we are able to not only unlock just one DNA component, we are able to unlock many DNA components. So as we start combining all of those different frequencies that I was talking to you about, okay, the 639, the 963, all of these frequencies that are supposed to unlock joy and have healing and whatever, as you combine them in harmonic tones, that's when it starts to resonate the DNA, and the DNA begins to unlock and release, are you ready for this? Spiritual cues to the rest of the body saying, okay, this is what we should be doing, and this is what's going to keep us well. Okay? I'm not kidding you. Not only the spiritual cues that the DNA releases to the body are cues to the brain. And those cues turn on spiritual gifts. They turn on healing potential. Again, like I said, you can hear that I've been kicking a cold and I'm kicking this bug or sinus or whatever it even is, but I never did get the flu. And I really believe it's because I sit there and translate these tonal languages of these angels all the time, and they speak in harmonics. So if we are going on that principle, then it makes a lot of sense that layered harmonics heal the body, okay? Because they do. And again, as our DNA, it vibrates, it releases cues to the cells to dump toxins. It releases cues to the cells to become more healthy. It releases cues to the cells to begin to replicate and mirror healthy cells and begin to toss out the viruses that are actually exploding the cells and taking them over. I mean, vibration is huge. And the frequency of A will kill a cancer cell. You hit A, okay? And again, A, it tends to be at 440 hertz. But you hit a cancer cell with A, it's going to die. So if we think about the fact that 396 hertz, okay, on a piano keyboard is G4. So that in the Solfeggio scale is liberating guilt or fear, and it sounds like this. So just the nature of this playing calms you down, doesn't it? That is triggering the brain and the DNA to chill out. And you probably have a change in your breathing. I mean, isn't that cool? The body has a physiological response to tone. And again, that is 396 hertz or G4 on the Solfeggio scale. And so when we look at all of this different incredible opportunity that we have tonally as we layer these things up, we actually see that the body is responding like a giant antenna to frequency and vibration and working between our body and our brain and our lessons to actually allow our cells to get rid of toxic junk. I mean, it's fascinating, right? So, okay, here's another one. So connecting with others or relationships on the Solfeggio scale hits at 369 hertz, which is D sharp 5. Now, not going to make a lot of sense to you unless you play piano. However, what's cool about that is that it is a connection vibration. So it's not just about connecting with somebody that you want to fall in love with. This particular frequency, this D sharp, this particular frequency is also about connecting with source. It's about connecting with your angels. It's about allowing your body to connect with other biophotons around you, or telepathy, okay? I mean, it's literally the connection. It is the connection response, and it sounds like this. That's 639 hertz. That's connection through the crown. That's connection to others. You feel that space in the limbic system right at the top of your skull where your soft spot would be if you were an infant. You feel that just opening up right there? Yeah, isn't that interesting? 639 hertz on the Solfeggio scale, D sharp 5, okay? So, as we go up, and there's really 6 main Solfeggio holy tones, or what they call them. I mean, sometimes they throw in the higher tones, but the higher up you get, that starts getting a little dicey in terms of how it hits the body. And those higher tones do benefit from being mixed in with other tones to create harmonics, which unlock a combination of DNA and physiological responses. So, we get a chance to see 417 hertz in the Solfeggio scale, which actually vibrates to not only unlock in the DNA reparative function, yet it also unlocks again in the neural net of the brain, in the auric system of the body, in the tonal woven energy body that we have. 417 hertz, okay, on the Solfeggio scale is really about undoing situations that are a bummer and facilitating change, okay? And that is G4 sharp, actually, which sounds like this. That is the tone of transition. That's the motivator tone. That speaks to that third eye as well as the heart. And the body interprets this completely different than the ears do. I love that. It's so much fun. So when we're thinking about all of this, okay, and we get up into some of our higher tones, like 741 hertz, which is an F sharp 5 on a keyboard, which again, if you don't play piano, that's not going to mean much to you. However, that particular, it is the expressions or the solutions. If you're looking for solutions or that aha moment, here's what it sounds like. Doesn't that just sound like, aha! Wait a minute! Eureka! I've got it! I mean, think about that. Think about that tone. So I could just play these all day, I suppose, but that's kind of boring. However, I'm just wanting you to understand and to see where those tones hit you in your body when I'm playing them, where they hit you in your brain, because again, this is not just about DNA. 528 hertz, of course, middle C, actually C above middle C, C5 is what causes the DNA to vibrate, but all of this causes the DNA to vibrate. We only were able to capture the DNA vibrating at that particular frequency. And quite honestly, if you take a series of tuning forks and you've got an A, B, C, D, E, and an F, and I have a C in my hand, and I whack that C tuning fork, and I run it past every single other tuning fork, nothing's going to happen until I get to the C. And at that point, the other C, without even touching it, is going to start to ring because it recognizes the synchronous harmonic. So this is why when you're hanging out with people that you really, really gel with, you love it and everything is going great and you really get each other. This is why, because your frequencies are literally creating a harmonic with one another that is working off the other person. I mean, we're talking serious physics to this, not just metaphysics, which of course we've got a lot of those going on too. But we're talking particle physics. We're talking sound physics. It's super cool, gang. So I really get into this because, again, even with the Solfeggio scale, even though I believe that all musical scales are holy, and we're not even getting in to some of the Hindu scales and quarter tones. Those quarter tones are just phenomenal, and that's a whole nuanced language all on its own. But let's stick to this little, westernized 6 little do-re-mi thing right now because we've only got an hour. So here we go. One of the things that I wanted to play for you before we got too far off into the stratosphere was 852 hertz, which is returning to spiritual order. So that returning to spiritual order is what I think it's interesting. It's on the Solfeggio scale, that is G sharp 5. G sharp 5. So if you're somebody who's playing along with me out there, returning to spiritual order or the angelic harmonic, okay, what they call the angelic harmonic. It's not actually technically an angel harmonic, but this is what it sounds like. So interestingly, on the Solfeggio scale, if you're looking for aha moment and solutions, you're here. And then if you're returning to spiritual order, you're here. It's pretty interesting. So if we were going, I just think that's fascinating. So the Solfeggio scale as it stands sounds a lot like this. That would be if you only used the Solfeggio scale, period. But it's important to note that leading tones in between all of those things actually link together a big portion of DNA. It's honest to God a thing. So not only are we opening up DNA, not only are we resonantly opening up selections of synaptic response in the brain, not only are we working with the chi or the prana of the body, not only are we communicating with one another and with the flesh in a way that we don't even know how to scientifically break down. We found one frequency that we can measure, 528 hertz, the DNA resonating at. But just like I talked about with those tuning forks and that C tuning fork, that doesn't mean the rest aren't resonating. It means that we caught that one. We were able to see that one. So I'm just going to play for you. I'm going to incorporate a significant amount of that Solfeggio scale in a harmonic piece that I'm just going to compose right now. This is kind of how I roll with healing, and we're going to incorporate everything. We're going to incorporate liberating guilt, undoing situations, transformation, DNA repair, connecting relationships, expression solutions, returning to the spiritual order. We're going to connect the whole entire enchilada, and we're going to have some passing tones also that are going to have some cool effects. So just sit back and enjoy this. that just took us through all kinds of release. That just took us through the 7 chakras. That tonal sequence took us through emotional release, spiritual release. That took us through actually DNA activation, connection with self. It moved us through the heart chakra. It moved us through the solar plexus, through the root. It moved us through everything, gang. And this is what's important to know, is that yes, though we can break down certain tones to have a specific meaning and to be able to identify that frequency through spiritual physics or metaphysics, it's also really important to remember that the combination or the harmonic of tones, those harmonics are what really whoop up a lot of that healing. And you could feel it. And dissonance sometimes. Some of those notes that I was playing were specifically dissonant because they don't necessarily go together all the time, because the Solfeggio scale isn't about sounding grand together. The Solfeggio scale itself is about isolating tones that either resonate with the DNA, or they resonate with the cellular structure, or they resonate in the auric field to connect the crown chakra with source. So it's important to remember that it's within the harmony of all of this where the greatest amount of our healing takes place. And why is this so cool? Well, it's so cool because it's a massive analogy for humanity. I mean, it's a massive analogy. We've got our low tones, we've got our mid tones, we've got our high tones. When we all work together and we come together as a chorus of energy beings and energy bodies, that's when we get the most done. Which is why I'm always talking about unifying everything, not identifying one another identically, yet unifying our harmonics together. And sometimes dissonance does create a healing harmonic. It's really interesting because this healing harmonic here, we're really dealing with the opening and resolution of finding resolve in the thought process, which when you tie it together with the throat chakra and you tie it all together with purpose, sounds like this, which is just a flat up C, okay? But we can move from complex purpose to the dissonance of opening up purpose, life path, and connection to God, and resolving it down to that 528 hertz frequency that opens up the DNA. So dissonance isn't always bad because it leads to a harmonic resolution. Do you see what I'm saying? So, I know this is kind of like, it's not a music theory class, I promise. What I'm communicating here, or trying to communicate anyway, is the importance of having us work together as a harmonic body, and to show you that, yes, we can pick apart frequencies all day long, but really what weaves a lot of the healing is the harmonic frequencies themselves. Not to say there's anything wrong with the particular tone. The tone is terrific. So for those of you that happen to be on our Patreon site here and you dial up some of the DNA repair music that I've done, or some of just the actual meditative music, everything that I put out, and other people too. It's not just about me. People who hear these things the way that I do. For me, I'm only speaking for myself. When I put that music out, gang, it's not just about the notes that I'm playing. It's also about how I'm mixing them in the harmonic field, the panning, the effects that get put on them, the hemispheres of the brain hear differently. And I'm not even going to get into that because that's a whole other thing. Yet what we're talking about is frequency response to the body. And the human voice is a huge healer, which is why when I've had Marcia Culver-Reichert on the show before, she does a lot of vocal healing work, and Marcia and I have sang together before. As a singer myself, when you sing, you are creating a vibration, obviously, with the vocal mechanism of the throat, yet you also are having your entire bag of salt water resonate and vibrate. So not only are you producing a tone that, again, is more, I would say, a nod towards the spirit of the Solfeggio scale, yet you are also Your whole being is vibrating with that tone, and the brain fires off with all of these synapses, and the brain goes crazy when this happens. And as we spoke earlier, biophotons are created in the brain, and those light particles that are created are quantumly entangled with light particles in other parts of the cosmos and the universe, maybe even within another human being. So as we sing to one another, we become this massive vibration of not just sound, but light. And this is why vocal music is so important. This is why using the voice is so important. This is why the Catholic Church and monks and the Tibetan monks, and you go on for the Taoist traditions, had people chanting, because the human body not only is producing all of these healing tones that we've discussed, actually open up DNA and open up different chakral points and different points in the auric field, yet the body, the human body, becomes a giant, literally resonator or subwoofer, but we're not in subfrequencies, but this resonator for healing frequency. So speaking to people, talking to people, is also a form of tonal healing. And allowing people to talk, allowing people to hear their own voice, allowing people to have the vibration of their voice resonating through the air, we need to hear ourselves speak. Now, some people talk too much. I'm Italian. I probably talk way too much. Yet at the same time, there is a gift and a healing capacity that comes along with the tone in the voice. The Plains Native American cultures have a term called alas, and that is the gift of speech, or the gift of tonality, or the gift of healing through words or tones with the mouth. So this culture goes back a long ways. Whether it's indigenous culture here in America, or whether it is Arabic culture or the quarter tones of Hinduism. In our standard scale in Western music, we've got 12 tones. And then all of a sudden you're bursting out into quarter tones in the Hindu scale. And oh my gosh, you've got a lot going on there. So you've got a lot of harmonic or quarter tone capacity to heal. And what I think is so fascinating about this is when you start to understand that you're a giant bag of salt water picking up all this electromagnetic energy that is actually turning into light once it hits your body. Sound turns into light because that's how the brain interprets it. How cool is that? Once you understand that, what you realize is the entire universe is connected in vibration and connected in light. And actually, sound is light. Those sound harmonics that angels speak in create light. And that's how I'm able to see characters that are sort of a side effect of that vibration. I mean, letters, I guess, is a better way to put it. Yet, when we understand this, the vibration of all of us is deeply important. And when we further understand that the more we speak, these words are being put out into the ether sphere and are being picked out by our little 8 billion other bags of salt water walking around that are all resonating antennas doing the same thing. Are you understanding the power we have as a species to generate resonant change, to generate massive waves of change and transformation on a vibration, literally a vibrational level? This is huge stuff, gang. I mean, music is fascinating and it's fun, and I love to produce it as a musician. Yet I love doing the healing music. Like I said, here on the Patreon site, if you're on the Patreon site, the music is there. It's on iTunes. It's all over the place. I've got a new album I'm working on that is all about miracle frequencies and the harmonics that open up the confidence in the human psyche to allow that DNA to resonate on all frequencies, not just the 528 frequency, but I mean all of them, to unlock all of our spiritual gifts and talents. Can you imagine what's going to happen to this planet when we all come out of the closet and stop acting like we don't know what we're doing and that we can't affect change? I mean, I think about it. That's massive. That's massive. And when people say to me, well, I don't know how to affect the quantum field, I tell them, sing. And they say, I can't sing. I'm like, can you talk? To quote the musical, The Music Man, singing is just sustained talking. And really, now that we know that this C above middle C, C5, right there, anytime you want to activate DNA, there it is. It's C5. It's not actually magic. And you don't have to be the greatest singer in the world. You just need to produce this tone. I mean, really, it's so simple. There's a reason that indigenous cultures sang and healed. There's a reason that monks chanted. There's a reason that even doing the rosary for the Catholic Church, it gets into this melodic drone when a group is doing it. And did you know oftentimes that melodic drone will tend to settle right here, right here. Mother Mary. People will get into a natural C. Now that's not the Solfeggio scale, that's C5. This is C4 right there. However, it's interesting how we gravitate towards middle C. The human species has middle C programmed into our DNA. And so we will automatically choose happy birthday to you. People will naturally go to a middle C to pull it out of thin air, even, quote, tone deaf people, because that frequency resonates in our DNA. We are unbelievably attached to vibration and to sound, to harmonic, to light, to music. We are waveform creatures. We are creatures of light, literally. Communicating in biophotons with the brain, communicating with each other vibrationally. Here's your C. Here you go, activate that DNA. You want to activate the quantum field? Sing. Sing along, sing loud, sing proud. And when people say, well, you're not singing in the Solfeggio scale, hate to tell you, but that is C. That's C5. It's in pretty much every single pop song practically out there at one time or another, even in a passing tone, okay? So we are activating these tones on a regular basis. So I hope I haven't drowned you in too much science today, yet I want you to understand fully that all tones are sacred. You are a harmonic light being whose very body is designed to resonate miracles and designed to resonate healing. Not only does the DNA respond to 528 hertz, which is C5 on the keyboard, yet it also responds to harmonic exchanges of passing tones. And a lot of what I was playing for you opened up the heart chakra. It opened up the third eye. It opened up the crown. All of those dancing tones. And again, it would take like 19 podcasts to explain how that all works. But you don't need to know it, really. Honestly, gang, you don't need to know technically why it all works, because you can feel it in your body, can't you? You ever listen to music and it just makes you burst into tears, like a really wonderful John Williams film score? Why does it make you cry? Because it's moving through your prana. It's moving through your chi system. It's moving through your auric system. It is moving through the DNA of your body. It is moving through your cells and communicating with you on a spiritual level, a language that you might not even have known your body was operating on the basis of. Yeah. More music. More Tibetan bowls. That's your homework for this week. Listening to more beautiful tones. If you want to just listen to the Solfeggio scale, go for it. Yet do understand that it is a harmonic combination of many tones that create their own healing vehicles. And I see this in the angelic realm all the time when they speak and they create these tonal harmonics, and those tonal harmonics create healing for people. Speaking to someone and telling them how much you love them is moving sound through the ethers. It is healing for people. Sing loud and proud, whether you're on tune or not, it doesn't matter. You're vibrating the quantum field. And you are allowing those biophotons in the brain to ignite somewhere that are quantumly entangled, perhaps in another person, and they may feel joy and they don't know why. And in case really quickly that you don't know what quantum entanglement is, that's when you have two light particles that are joined at the hip, so to speak, even though they can be light distances away. They can be anywhere in the universe. When one vibrates, the other vibrates too. Because we're all connected, gang. So, Go forward this week. Recognize that you are part of a giant quantum fabric. Heal by singing. Heal by laughing. Heal by talking to others. Allow that energy to flow through you. And remember that all tones are sacred. I'm going to take you out here today with a little bit of music that's coming through from the angelic realm, so I better whip this out for you here, or I get in trouble on the other end of my job. Gang, I love all of you, and we will see you next week.